I'm going to talk about my experience and how I got into research at the University of Oregon, and hopefully that can help you get into research at University of Oregon or at other colleges, depending on your specific situation. I got interested in research senior year of high school when I took a class called Honors Biomed, and basically in that class, I did some research and I actually interviewed faculty members at UCLA, and I talked about their research, and I actually got interested in the process in general. I didn't really know specifically what type of research I'd be doing. I was just interested in joining a lab, and that's why I sent out emails to about 15 labs the summer before I went into college. A lot of people don't do this, and it's not necessary that you email labs before you get to college. You can start research anytime in college, pretty much. But the earlier you start, the more likely it is that you'll actually get into a lab before you graduate, and the more time you'll have to develop in the lab. So I'd recommend, if you know you want to get into research and you're not in college yet, to just send out your resume to a bunch of colleges. If you don't know how to make a resume, I have another video on that, and I'm just going to link it in the description so you can click there. But it's pretty straightforward. There's a lot of just pre-made documents on Word and Google Docs and stuff like that. But you're going to want to send that out. And if you're still in high school, you can actually try to do things to make this resume more impressive, like take science classes or do things that are science related, maybe even at a local community college. I'm sorry that my voice sounds a little weird. I'm just sick right now, but that's beside the point. So once you send emails out to a bunch of different labs, probably none of them will respond to you, and that's fine. What happened to me is actually one lab responded to me and asked for my resume. I sent it to them. I never heard back from them. And another lab out of the 15 labs emailed me about halfway through winter term, and at Oregon we're on quarters, so that's the second term of the year. It's about halfway through the school year if you don't count the summer term, which I don't really. I think we're more trimesters than quarters because no one really takes classes in the summer anyway. But I heard back from the Swan lab, which is the lab I'm in right now, and they asked me to do an interview over a computer, over Zoom, and actually joined the lab. And I've continued working in that lab. So now I'm going to talk about what you should do once you actually get into a lab. The first step is to email as many labs as you possibly can and try to have as much experience as you possibly can. And even if you don't have any experience, you should still email a lot of labs. Just to put this into perspective, there's people in my lab right now that aren't even majoring in neuroscience, and it's a motor neuroscience lab. And I believe this girl that's in my lab is majoring in anthropology or humanities, or some humanities. And that's just to emphasize my point that you don't actually need to be a STEM major to do research. And a lot of people actually plan to be pre-meds and don't major in a STEM field, which is fair, right? Because then you don't have to take so many science classes, which, there's pros and cons to that, because then the science classes you do take have a bigger impact on your science GPA. But, to each their own, and you can find out what works best for you. I personally just like taking some of the other science classes, and a lot of them are easier than the ones required for medical school. Like, compare a human physiology class that's just about medical terminology or the scientific method to organic chemistry and physics and stuff like that. But anyway, back to the main point about being in a lab. So if you're in a lab, what's really important is to talk to everyone and to go to all of the lab events. And a lot of the lab events can be really cool. For example, my lab actually took everyone on a skiing trip, and it was really fun. I got to meet some of the undergrads in my lab, which I don't actually see that much because all of our lab meetings are over Zoom still, even though COVID seems, to me at least, to be a thing of the past for the most part. Everything's back in person now, but our lab meetings are over Zoom still. So I've not met most of the undergrads in person. We got to go skiing, got to hang out. We ended up just jumping in this lake on the way back, just me and the undergrads I went with, and it was pretty fun. But even if it's not a cool trip like that you'd want to go to, even if it's just like a Halloween social event or the journal club meetings, you should go to these things because you're going to be able to talk to the graduate students. And that's how you get on projects. In my lab, undergraduates basically just do upkeep tasks that the graduate students don't want to do. And that's their main role in the lab. But if you want to get on a publication or you want to do meaningful work, you need to talk to them and try to get involved in their projects and hopefully have some skills. And one good skill to have is programming, because a lot of labs actually need programming for data analysis. I'd say almost all labs need to do data analysis, and being able to code is helpful for that. So that's actually one of my skills. I basically am completely self-taught in my programming knowledge, and I'm not great. My programming's not that neat, but I do know how to do it, and I have produced graphs and figures and stuff like that. So it's nice to have skills like this. And if you're interested in getting into a lab, you could just watch a bunch of videos, maybe make a basic project, and then you can put that on your resume. And that's going to look really good. Data analysis skills with Python or something, right? Like, that looks good on your CV. And it makes it more likely that labs are going to reach out to you. Makes you seem like you're motivated to learn on your own if you can say that you're self-taught too. But even if it's not programming, it's important to learn specific techniques in your lab so that you can get on a publication. The other thing I would say is that you should try to get a scholarship, because there are a lot of scholarships, at least at the University of Oregon, for research. So I'm going to talk about some of them and the one that I specifically got. So this term, I got the Knight Campus Undergraduate Research Scholarship. I think that's what it stands for. It's the KCUS scholarship. And basically, this scholarship is going to pay me $8,000 over the course of a year, and I don't have to do any extra work. I'm already in the lab. All it does is incentivize the faculty to put me on more projects, because they also get funding when I do projects with them. So I would recommend that you apply to this if you're already in a lab, but if you're not in a lab yet, you can still apply for this scholarship, and they will place you in a lab. But I would recommend having a lot of different skills and a good resume and stuff like that before you apply for it. I think you have to at least be a sophomore anyway. I'm currently a sophomore, and I applied for it. There's also a lot of other scholarships you can apply for. And even if you don't have a scholarship, there's lots of opportunities. There's this thing called the Undergraduate Research Symposium, where you can make a poster. And even if you don't get on a publication, having a poster is a great thing to have on your resume if you want to switch to a different lab because you're not getting access to very many projects in your current lab, or just to show to your PI and say, look, I'm doing all this work in the lab and I really want to get on more projects. Would you have any advice for me? And it shows that you're motivated and you're trying to learn more. The last thing I'm going to talk about is the journal clubs. So reading publications is difficult. It's probably one of the more difficult parts of being in a lab, because there's a lot of science jargon and there's a lot of terms you probably don't know about, because I'm going to use a word that my organic chemistry teacher says all the time. He says esoteric, and there is some esoteric stuff. It seems like not that many people understand what this is, and it's like very specialized, and that's fair. You're probably not going to understand it. And the key to understanding research publications is to be okay with being confused and, not just reading it top to bottom. Start with the results. And honestly, start with the abstract. See if it's even a paper that you're going to want to read. Then look at the results. Then come back and go through it. And don't read it super slowly trying to understand everything. Just kind of go through it. Write down all the words you don't know what they mean. Look them up. And then try to pick up pieces and bits of it. And then go to the meeting and ask questions. That's way better than sitting there spending hours trying to understand what one paragraph means, because you don't even know what anatomy stuff means because you haven't taken anatomy yet. Basically, the stuff's going to be over your head, and the best way to go about it is to try to get a big picture understanding of the papers. So that's basically all my advice. I've done a couple projects, mostly data analysis stuff. I'll go over that in the future, but this is a basic guide for doing undergraduate research in college, and I talked about some specific things at the University of Oregon that can maybe help you. So hopefully this helps you in your journey, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.